Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/malicious compliance for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Obvious Secretary 151. Show up 30 minutes early. Sure, Dave, as long as you do too. I am 15 years old and work as a soccer referee. I will normally arrive 10 to 15 minutes early to a game, which is plenty of time to check in players from both teams and make sure the field is in proper playing condition. One game I showed up to, as an assistant referee, AR, my center ref, 18 years old, let's call him Dave, told me that all refs have to arrive 30 minutes early to every game. I know this is not true and stayed silent. We refed the game as usual and returned to where we put our stuff at the end of the game. Dave told me that because I didn't arrive 30 minutes early, he would mark that I didn't show up, basically telling me that I wouldn't get paid for the game we just worked. I complained that this was a rule that he made up. He left the game without saying anything else, figuring that would be all. Note, if you referee without any assistant refs, you get paid like $5 more. I think this was Dave's plan. When I got home, I made sure to sign up to be a center referee at every game where Dave was an assistant ref. Poor Dave only showed up to his next game 15 minutes early, which is absolutely unacceptable. I said nothing the whole game, but only marked him absent, which means he wouldn't get paid. This went on for a week and a half until his paycheck came in, and he was about $120 off of what his total should have been. I did make sure every game that Dave was less than 30 minutes early. Dave emails one of the main referees, who run everything, to see what the problem was. One of the main referees, let's call him John, told Dave that he wasn't there, so he wouldn't get paid. Dave put two and two together and realized what I did. Emails were sent between Dave, John, and I until John had the full story. Dave was fired for making up rules, and I got paid for the first game with Dave. Don't take advantage of young people. Take that, Dave. Edit, don't take advantage of people, not just young people. Also, you and Dave have a 3-year age gap. I wouldn't... I mean, I guess to you, that's that's enough of an age gap, but damn, I'm getting old. Also, there's definitely the argument that OP probably could have gone straight to management to report Dave's bullshit rule behavior and what he was doing. But the thing is, this was actually probably the best solution possible. Because not only did Dave get a very nasty taste of his own medicine, but you gotta think, there's a non-zero chance, in fact it's probably a pretty good chance, that Dave was actively doing this to other people, and not just OP here. Chances are Dave has actually been doing this for a while, and my hope would be is that once this was exposed and they realize, oh shit, this guy has just been raking us through the coals and causing us to underpay a lot of our staff so he can get an additional $5. And perhaps, potentially, they can then look back and realize how many times Dave has potentially fucked over someone else, and, potentially, pay the assistant refs what they're actually owed after getting screwed over by Dave. Large Art 9229. Send out defective parts? Okay. Years ago, I was head of quality control for a major partner company that built transmission parts for a big US automaker that started with F. My job at the company consisted of daily audits and testing of parts to make sure that they met specifications and functioned correctly. One of the testing procedures was a machine that would test the parts to ensure they rotated 360 degrees without catching or getting stuck, and they either passed or failed. Failed parts would get reworked, of course. For the first year, the job was great, and I took pride in it because if you're spending over 50 grand on a new car, you'd want it to work properly, right? Well, after a year, the plant manager and CEO of the partner company came up to me one day and said that we would no longer be doing the rotation test. I was surprised because, for one, any changes in procedure have to be approved by F, and second, my written work instructions at the station has to be changed out, updated, and stamped with approval, which was standard procedure anytime work instructions were updated. The work instructions would also have to be reviewed by F. They told me to not worry about it and just stop testing the parts and to just pack them up and ship them. I definitely sensed a crap storm coming because we did, unfortunately, have a high defect rate, and without this test process, 30% of the parts the customer received would be bad. But cue malicious compliance. First thing I did was cover my butt. I typed up an official document stating I would not be responsible for any bad or defective parts that make it past me. Then I had it signed by the CEO and plant manager who didn't even really bother looking over it. Then I had it notarized by our company's notary. Within a month, the results were clear. We were getting many complaints about bad parts, and parts were being returned at an alarming rate. Some higher-ups from F even did a walkthrough to try and see what the issue was, and that's when they noticed that we weren't testing the parts before sending them out anywhere. I was called into the conference room later that day for a meeting with the plant manager, the CEO, and the higher-ups from F. The plant manager and CEO looked furious, and I knew they were going to put the blame on me, but I was prepared. Plant manager: OP, the reason we called you here is because it was brought to our attention you aren't testing the parts before sending them out anymore. Is there a reason for this? He said with a smug look. Me: yeah, you said not to test them anymore and to just send them out. CEO: that's not true, we never said that. I then proceeded to pull out the paper they mindlessly signed. Me: here's the agreement you signed, saying I'm not responsible for any bad parts getting sent out and how we were no longer testing them. The plant manager and CEO's face both went pale, and I then gleefully handed the paper to the higher-ups from F. I was then asked to leave the room, and on my way out, I handed my 2 weeks' notice to the plant manager because I knew this company was screwed and had another job lined up. Long story short, they lost their contract with F and got sued for $3 million. The company shut its doors, and last I heard they filed for Chapter 3 bankruptcy. I don't know what happened to the building or anyone else that worked there, and I don't even care, but I do know F had a major parts shortage for a while after this. My guess would be that the company that, this auto manufacturer was partnering with wasn't hitting a specific quota they were expected to, and they probably foolishly realized, if we just cut out QA, we could definitely hit this product goal pretty easily. So they did. I do wonder if they assumed that because there was no official documentation, or at least in their eyes, that they had changed the instruction set, they could get away with blaming the lower-end employees if something went wrong. Now, admittedly, initially, I thought that because they mentioned using the company's notary, that was a big sign this post would be fake, because normally notaries require all parties to be present when signing, and also valid identification. But it turns out that at a lot of companies, the notary will just fucking sign whatever and call it good, which seems very not okay and a good way to lose your notary license. But according to the comments, at least, on this post, that's common practice, and it shouldn't be. So it seems that laziness runs through the company to even the point where the notary was partaking in cutting corners. Even if this story might be fabricated, which I'd say it's a, coin toss if I'm going to be 100% honest, this is still an incredibly great cautionary tale to have of why you should always make sure you have extensive documentation and paper trails, especially if management decides to have you change your responsibilities that could most certainly impact the company down the line. Always make sure you have your bases covered. Even something as simple as, please make sure to send this to me in writing so I have record of this request. Last thing you want is because management decided to pull a few strings fast and loose that you're now the immediate fall guy because there's no record of them telling you to play fast and loose. Not a swordmaster. Kitchen duty. This is starting to be a long time ago now. I was working on IT support for a municipality, traveling around and fixing incidents and fulfilling requests. My team was at the office a varying amount, but I would say 80 to 100% traveling between tasks. As many who work in offices probably have experience from, the kitchen is always a mess. Coffee cups and plates just lying around. We had even bought an industrial dishwasher, either easy to load trays. One for plates, one for bowls, and one for cups and glasses. But people are stupid and lazy, and put things on the bench or in the wrong tray. So a genius found out that we needed a rotating kitchen duty plan. So everyone has one day where they are responsible for the kitchen. This wasn't a kitchen for making food, so it was basically just a coffee machine, fridge, and microwave. The list came out, and I saw my team on the list. So I immediately contacted the ones responsible and explained that my team is traveling most of the day, we are rarely at the office, and usually grab a lunch while traveling, so we shouldn't be on the list. They reply that everyone will be on the list. So again, raise the issue that we're not at the office, and I get a reply saying that we'll just have to come to the office to take our responsibility. Here's where my malicious compliance kicks in. My day comes up, so I go to the office, turn on an audiobook, and take my place in the kitchen. Whenever someone came into the kitchen to place something on the counter, I would make a noise, pointing to the trays. If they put it wrong, I would point to the picture of where to place the thing. I did this for 7 hours that day. I got some questions about my workload, in which I replied I had a lot to do, but I had kitchen duty, so I wouldn't be able to go out to do any of the incidents. After the second time I did this, and the big boss asked questions, the list was finally changed, and my team was removed. Happy face. The person responsible for the list still thought it was unfair that we didn't have to do kitchen duty. Honestly, good on OP for standing up for his team, but what kind of work environment are you in where the adults surrounding you are incapable of just having basic kitchen etiquette? Like, the moment an industrial dishwasher was purchased to handle the laziness of the other employees, that should have been a massive red flag. And a serious conversation should have happened about maintaining the kitchen. Either you take care of it, and you take care of your plates and your dishes and that kind of stuff, or you don't get the kitchen at all. It should have been drawn at that line. Either you respect the kitchen, or you lose the kitchen. Do you want a fridge to be able to store your lunch for the day or a microwave to heat it up? Well, then respect the space that they're in. And if the person creating the kitchen duty list finds it unfair that an entire team is exempt from being on the list, well, I mean, it's also unfair for them to have to be assigned kitchen duty when they hardly use the kitchen in the first place. Because now you're punishing an out-of-office team that for some reason they can't get it through the thick skull what out-of-office means, to then be responsible for everyone else's dishes who are in office. That feels unfair. That actually feels like an unfair situation to be in. Scary Expert 1929. Punishing me for underperforming for 1 day and 2 years? No problem. Hello everyone, I will try to be concise. Background. I work at a company where I handle mid to high level complaints to managers, PR, and legal. My daily requirement is 40 cases handled per day. There are some of my team colleagues that struggle with this, but I don't, and I don't feel lazy to stop at 40, so I've handled 50 to 55 basically every day for the past 2 years. There is no bonus or even recognition for this. I just did it because I felt a friendly obligation to the company. Complaints can be a 5-minute resolution or a 2-hour Zoom call with our New York lawyers. It's a gamble, really. The event. Recently, I had a day where I felt sick and, at the time, had bad luck of getting only very hard cases that required more time. So, I had 39 cases. 1 under the requirement. I thought nothing of it, as my weekly averages are way off the charts, 50 plus the usual. The very next day, I felt better and went back to my usual high numbers. Come Monday, I had an emergency one-on-one with my manager where I was informed that I had to attend a 3-day workshop/seminar on how to best meet requirements because I underperformed last week. My jaw dropped, and I asked, don't they count the weekly, monthly, yearly numbers? To which I was told the daily requirement is 40, and this is standard practice. Nothing we can do. Basically, it was a workshop for underperformers who had 20 to 30 out of 40 cases daily. It was nothing hard, but I did need to drive there for 3 days after work and listen to HR guys giving bad advice, as they never actually handle the cases in real life, and I had to talk about what will I do to improve my numbers and reach the 40, as the nonsense HR talk calls it. This made me lose hours and hours of my free time, and I was livid. After it was over, I had a long think and decided that I will do exactly that. I will reach the 40. And that's it. The aftermath. For the past few months, I go into work, I handle 40 cases, my daily requirement, and then I do nothing for the rest of my shift. I have had multiple one-on-ones with my manager during this time, and I am constantly asked, is something wrong? To which I naively reply, no, am I in trouble? Am I underperforming? And then, of course, they say that I am 100% within my daily requirements, and that way, I shut the conversation down. This is real life, so I can't really say a clever comeback or something like that, but I do keep playing the fool that has no idea what's wrong now. But I find satisfaction in knowing that they got used to my overachieving and are now suffering for the lack of it. Before Easter, they put up an internal ad for promoting another 2 managers. So, my guess is now, that is the number of people they will now need to pay extra just because they lost me as an overachiever. and they lost me for no reason other than their own stupidity. Thank you all. I hope I did not bore you. I do feel like we just had a post a few days ago where I specifically mentioned that when you overachieve, it becomes the norm. Or it's not even noticed and they just assume that's part of your standard responsibilities at that point, despite it not being within your job contract. This is also a perfect example of the fact that management will never admit they're wrong. I guarantee to you that they've probably realized, hey, after we sent the guy that usually does 50 to 55 cases per day to an emergency underperforming workshop, he's only doing the bare minimum now. Like, yeah, that's your fault. That's your problem. You punished him for having one day where he underperformed by 1, despite being above the average by 10 to 15 every day. Honestly, if I was a manager in this position and I saw that one of my star employees who goes above and beyond suddenly only had 39 instead of their usual 50 to 55, my response would be like, hey, are you doing okay? Did something happen? Is your workstation fully functional? Like, what's going on, bud? Is there anything I can do to help you out? But no. Gotta send them to the HR seminar where they create useless fucking shit like, reach the 40! And call it good. God, I hate it when they do shit like that. That actually reminds me of when I was a paid intern at a software developer company for a web API for a DoD contract, and one of the HR reps that was outsourced wanted us to do, like, essentially no matter what, daily commits to the main branch. Not just our local branches that we're working on a feature for, the main branch. I can only assume they weren't looking in the right category for how they were monitoring everyone's progress, but they were only looking for pushes to the main branch. And because sometimes when you're building a feature from the ground up, you're not going to have daily pushes to the main branch because it's a buggy mess and you don't want to break everyone else's code. But no. They really wanted us to make sure that we were pushing everything to the main branch every night, even if it was unfinished, and more importantly, without a code review. So then we would end up in a position where we would have a nightmare of a pull request in the morning and have to essentially fix someone else's code just so we could launch the application. It was a lot of fun. Thank God that only lasted for a week because someone was smart enough to show the HR rep that they were looking at the wrong dialog box, essentially. And then if they wanted to see everyone's progress and what they were actually committing to their local branches, you look at it here. God, that was almost 6 years ago. Good God. Vague, ambiguous name. Boss took credit for my work. Malicious compliance occurred. A few years ago, I was hired as a manager to create the contracts department of a tech startup. My boss was on the opposite coast as me, and we barely spoke. About a year in, the company hired consultants to overhaul departments except for contracts because it was running so smoothly. I was truly proud of this. The company sent me on a paid trip to the Bahamas as a thank you. After I got back from vacation, I asked for a raise to director level. My boss said I just wasn't there. I asked for a list of what I would need to do to be a director. He sent me a list, which was everything I was already doing, and basically admitted that if I was a director, he would no longer be able to take credit for my work. Friends told me I needed to either leave or put up and shut up. Instead, I chose to kill with kindness. I wholeheartedly apologized to my manager for overstepping, and said that I'm going to step back into the manager role. I printed out the manager responsibilities and posted them to my desk. Things went south quicker than I could have imagined. We started missing sales targets. Product said my boss agreed to a term in an agreement that would completely destroy their budget and product rollout. My boss didn't know commission agreements and let sales manipulate contracts, so we were paying commission on contracts with termination clauses. I only interjected once to stop a contract amendment from being approved because my boss was unknowingly letting a VP artificially inflate sales numbers. The controller and CFO had to get involved. Eventually, the CEO was called in. Stories started circulating about my boss holding stress balls and cursing in meetings. I was more relaxed than ever, and during my newfound free time at work, I studied for and obtained professional certifications. I would also leave work early to get to the gym before it got busy. About a month after I unloaded my added responsibilities, my boss gave me a 7% bonus. It was unspoken, but I could tell he wanted me to take back on the director responsibilities without the title. But I continued to follow the manager description to a T. 6 months later, after taking 10 days of my unlimited PTO, I was included in layoffs. Took 3 months off, and then got another job at a 35% salary increase. While I am happy to be making more money, I truly love the company and people I worked with, and it's defeating to watch someone continually take credit for your work. Seems to be a pretty common trend of managers taking advantage of one of their employees doing more responsibility than they're supposed to. When they ask for a raise or any kind of recognition, they're denied, and those responsibilities are no longer done. Then everything begins to fall apart. If you're being treated poorly in your workplace, then don't bother putting in extra work. Just do the work that's within your job description the best you can and call it good. The more recognition you get if you enjoy the place you work at and you would actually want to proceed up the corporate ladder, then maybe consider actually taking on more work or just doing your work at maximum effort. You want to take more stuff on, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to communicate with upper management at what kind of responsibilities you would want to take on, and ensuring that there is a clear path forward for you to receive a promotion or a pay bump increase. Last thing you want is to be in an OP's position here where you're taking on additional tasks and additional responsibilities and your manager gets full credit for it, and you get nothing. Don't give to a company who's unwilling to give back. I'd actually be very curious to hear from people who have been in the corporate world long enough of what they feel and how they think and what they think is the proper way to approach situations like this and how they've kind of navigated and dealt with bullshit like this in the past. How do you, as someone who's been in the corporate space, deal with the work responsibilities you're required to do and the work responsibilities you are not required to do, but have chosen to take on in hopes for a promotion? What's the best way to navigate that? I'd definitely be curious to hear from those of you who have far more experience than I do. Prestigious Promise 20. She thought I was working that day. I was just not at that store. This is pretty complicated, so sorry it's going to be long. Too long didn't read at the bottom. In the early years of being a pharmacist, jobs in my city were hard to come by. I managed to get full-time hours by working for a couple of pharmacist friends at both of their stores. They would work out my schedule together and put an X on my schedule on days I was at the opposing store. One store was downtown, and one was in the suburb I lived in. At the suburb pharmacy, I had a coworker, D, who could just not wrap her brain around the fact that if there was an X by my name, I was in fact working, just at the other store. Multiple times, I would have call after call on my cell phone and just hang-ups on my answering machine at home because she wanted me to cover her shift at the suburb store when I was already working downtown. Worst thing was, my cell phone charged me for every single call. So after the second time of her pulling this, I would get downtown and immediately pull the battery off my phone. This made her angry at me for ignoring her, and we had a tepid relationship after that. Time went on, and the suburb store started expanding their nursing home operation, so I was able to work there full-time instead. I still had a great relationship with the downtown store, and they had me keep the keys in case of emergencies. They would occasionally come up, and the X would be on my schedule by my name. Sadly, Dee became the assistant manager, and now thought she was the boss of me. Now downtown pharmacist's daughter was getting married, and suburb pharmacist was invited to all the festivities. I got scheduled to work the Thursday before at the downtown store. The X went by my name on the suburb schedule. I was also going to the wedding. I was good friends with the daughter, but missing the Mendy party on Thursday, I was working for her mom. I was on the phone with her on my break one time, and she was saying how sorry she was I was missing it. And I said, "Don't worry, I'll just doodle brown Sharpie all over my hands and pretend I was there when we aren't busy." Now, at that exact week, we are getting new pharmacy software downloaded. Nursing homes are run on a batch system where all the labels are run about 5 days before, and then the bubble packs are made up during that time, and then the actual billing is done on the Thursday for the meds to be delivered Friday. Dee decided that she did not want the batch to be done and just wanted everything to be processed and made up on the Thursday for just this first week. My technician was freaking out, so I just told her to make up the usual drug cards, Lipitor, Aspirin 81, multivitamin, Altase, etc., without any patient data, just to help speed things along. Dee overheard and told the tech that she wasn't allowed to do that, and this younger generation is just scared of hard work. I panicked a bit because I was the only one of my age, Gen X, as all my coworkers were boomer-aged or older. I went and checked the schedule. Yep, there's an X by my name. I won't be there for the shit show, but somehow Dee thinks I am? Why should I tell her any different? Thursday rolls around, and at 12:30, my cell phone starts blowing up. It's in my purse in the safe because I don't get a lunch break, only pharmacist. and everyone can hear it. Out comes the battery. I get home after work, and there's screaming and swearing on my answering machine. A locum pharmacist worked the morning shift and wasn't introduced to do anything, so everything was left for D when she arrived at 12:30. She had to work late to finish over 500 prescription drug cards. I come in the next day, and she's still furious. "You said you were working! I heard you talking about the effing Mendy thing!" I told her I was working, just not at that store, as evidenced by the X by my name. I learned then that she could eavesdrop on my break room from one place in the pharmacy when she herself was the only pharmacist working at the time. All my breaks were taken in my car after this. Too long didn't read, coworker tried to make my day absolutely hell by trying to make me do 5 days of work in one day. A day that I wasn't working, so she had to do it. So basically, you told someone, "Hey, we should probably get a head start on this just so that we're not doing 5 days of work, on Thursday here, and make this a bit easier for ourselves." D said no. That's too lazy. And because she said no, that's too lazy, and you weren't working that Thursday, she had to fulfill over 500 orders on her own that could have been started a few days prior. And then she came into the store, realized very quickly that she would be the one doing the 500 prescription drugs, tried to blow up your phone and figure out why you weren't working despite not checking the schedule and seeing the X by your name that had been a pre-established thing for multiple months, if not years on end, and on top of that, probably realized in that moment how much she fucked up by how much work she had to do that could have been done a few days prior. Whoopsie whoopsie, she probably didn't learn her lesson. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.